Hi, good morning, everybody. We still have some people logging on, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Nikki. I'm with ACG Columbus. Today's webinar is Pivoting in a Pandemic. And before we get started with the program, I just wanted to cover a few things. Everyone will remain muted throughout the session, but there is a question box in your GoToWebinar toolbox, should be at one of the sides of your screen. So you can always submit questions. We'll be monitoring those. And if we have time during the program, we'll get to them. Otherwise, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. If anyone can hear me but has technical difficulties, you can always email me at acgcolumbus@acg.org. I'll be monitoring that email for any issues. Today's program is being recorded. So if, that'll be distributed afterwards. If you if you miss anything, I want to listen later, that'll be sent out to everybody and also available on our website. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick things over to our moderator today. It's Casey Grisey with GBQ. GBQ is one of our annual sponsors, and Casey also serves on our Young ACG Columbus committee. So Casey, you can take it from here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nikki. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today, as Nikki mentioned, for Pivoting in a Pandemic. We're really fortunate, I think, to be joined by three really great individuals. I've gotten to know them a little bit through the prep for this, and great individuals involved in three really great companies. I think it's safe to say we're all lucky at these companies called Columbus home. Today's event is brought to you jointly by ACG and YACG. For those of you unfamiliar with ACG Columbus, we're a chapter of the global organization, the Association for Corporate Growth. We promote the growth and development of Columbus area businesses for the benefit of our communities in Ohio. And YACG is a subgroup with events specifically geared towards emerging leaders under 35, although of course everyone is welcome. Membership in ACG and YACG Columbus enables you to network with other local members and sponsors at monthly programming events, social outings, and national events. Since staying on the theme of pivoting, virtual events like this allow us to provide value even while socially distanced. Well, as you can imagine, we're hopeful we can safely return to in-person events soon, because happy hours are a whole lot more fun in person. Before diving in, like you mentioned, my name is Casey Grisey, and I'm moderating today's discussion. Been on the YACG committee now for, I feel like the Wiley veteran, I've been around now for about 5 or 6 years. My day job is manager in the business valuation practice at GBQ. For those who may be unfamiliar, GBQ is an accounting firm headquartered here in Columbus. We empower growth through services ranging from audit and tax to litigation support, IT, cybersecurity consulting, transaction advisory, outsourced bookkeeping. I'm sure I'm missing something in there, but if you or your business have a need, there's a good chance either we can help or we can find the right people to help you out. With that, as a high school teacher told me, if you want to be seen, stand up. If you want to be heard, speak up. If you want to be liked, shut up. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Claire Coder, founder and CEO of OnFlow. Greg Lehman, founder and CEO of Watershed Distillery. And last but certainly not least, Steve Worman, CFO at Homage. Before diving into the COVID-related content, I'd like to begin just by having the panelists kind of introduce yourselves, talk a little about your backgrounds, your roles, how you got to where you are. And since you are first on my list, Claire, you get to kick us off, and then we'll go to Greg and then Steve.
Awesome. Yay. Happy Tuesday. I like to say the days out loud now because for so many entrepreneurs, we never knew the days, but now even more so, I have no idea what day it is. But today is Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. I'm Claire. I'm the founder and CEO of OnFlow, and we are most known for manufacturing tampons and pads for businesses and schools. So we always like to say if toilet paper is offered for free, why aren't tampons and pads? And in the pandemic, we launched an additional division of Flow called Workflow. And that is all of the necessities that you may need to keep things flowing, which includes masks, disinfectant wipes, cloth masks, liquid disinfectant, and a variety of additional products. So that is a little bit about Flow.
Awesome. I'll jump in. I'm Greg from Watershed Distillery, and we have been making booze in this city actually for 10 years now. So 2010 we started. So at the beginning, it was just my business partner and I turning on the lights, turning on the stills, sweeping the floor, doing a little bit of everything. And we've grown over the years, added a few new products. And in 2017, we opened a restaurant on site. We have built the team from just the two of us to about 50 people to start this year. And when COVID hit, we saw, we took a pretty big hit. So if you think about our business, we were selling spirits to bars and restaurants all over Ohio. We had our own restaurant. And so on March 15th, when the governor closed the restaurants, we lost our restaurant along with most of our business out in the marketplace. And so we really had to make a huge pivot, and it wasn't right away. We'll kind of talk through some of that as we go. There were some real lows, and then we worked our way back up to somewhat of a high, making hand sanitizer and feeling like we were really helping with the cause and giving ourselves and our team purpose. And we were fortunate to have the right licenses and to have some things fall into place to let us do that. And so we pivoted and made some hand sanitizer, and now we are back to making booze, which is kind of fun. The whole ride's been crazy, the ups and downs. But I'm excited to be here and talk through it and share some of our stories and learnings along the way.
Great. Hi, my name's Steve Werman. I'm with Homage. We are an apparel company here based in Columbus. We've been in business for 13 years, and I've been here for about 7 years. We've had quite the experience, similar to Greg and Claire. We've all had, and probably everyone on this call, we've had to pivot in some way or another. So for us, one of the things that we do well is we play a lot in the sports area. So when sports were shut down, we had to figure out how we were going to pivot our business. We also have 6 retail stores, 2 in Columbus, 2 in Cleveland, 2 in Cincinnati, that were shut down as of March 16th. And we had to close down our distribution center for a while there was some, while they were working, we were figuring out if we were allowed to be open. So our business kind of got upended just like everyone else's, and everyone's world's been upended. So, we're not unique in that way, but, we've had to react. And I think our team has done an incredible job doing so. And I'm happy to, and that's by working with people in the community. I don't know, Greg, if you remember this, but I called you up and you got hand sanitizer for us when we were opening up our distribution center. So, we've talked with plenty of people in the community, and, Columbus has been a great place for that. So excited to share about what we've learned throughout this process.
We have Greg's hand sanitizer at our office too.
I was going to say, like, all 3 of us kind of talked at certain points during the crisis. So it's cool to see Columbus working together and kind of talk about some of this stuff.
And we didn't even plan that when putting together the panel, so that's some nice serendipity there. That works out well. So you all mentioned kind of a little bit, you said at a little bit of a higher level what your organizations did to pivot in the pandemic. Yeah, I'd just be curious to kind of dig in a little bit more behind the decision-making process, early on, before, just because there's so much uncertainty around this. I feel like we've started hearing about it maybe January, and then things didn't start getting shut down until it was the Arnold in early March, and things kind of accelerated quickly from there. So love for all of you to kind of walk us through what that decision-making process looked like, the steps you took early on in order to kind of pivot your business. So I think we'll switch up the order. We'll go Greg, then Steve, then Claire.
All right, so I wish I could sit here and tell you how far out in front of this I was and how visionary and smart I was, but it's kind of the opposite. We had our holiday party. This shows you the highs and the lows. We had our holiday party. So in the restaurant world, you can't have your holiday party in December. So just first, if you're not around restaurants, you won't understand. But if you're in the restaurant world, you hear holiday party in March, that makes perfect sense. We had it that first, or the Sunday, but so it was probably the 7th or the 8th, whatever that Sunday was, we had our holiday party. It was over at Seventh Son, and we had the whole company there, and I stood up in front of everybody and gave this speech of like, 2019 was our best year ever. We've got the greatest team we've ever had. You know, whatever 2020 throws at us, we got this. Like, this is like, I'm so excited. And we had a great evening. Wednesday of that week, we had our owners meeting. So we're getting closer to Sunday. And you would think like, by now, Greg, you realize like COVID's coming back. No, that's not, I'm not there yet. We have our owners meeting. We're not a big company. We got a few owners. And so they're sitting there, and every year we have this annual meeting, and I stand up and tell them about the year before and what we're planning for the coming year. And I said all the same stuff. Greatest year ever. We've got a great team. We're excited. Columbus is, it's an exciting time to be in Columbus. And a couple of the owners were like, well, what about this disease coming? And my wife even raised her hand and said, well, what about making hand sanitizer? And I was like, we've got this. It's not as bad as you think. No way we need to make hand sanitizer. Like, we are a booze company. And, you know, I'm standing up there thinking I've got all the right answers. And so then fast forward to the next morning. And it wasn't until Thursday morning of that week that I woke up and really started looking around and said, this is serious, and I don't know what we're gonna do. And I think there was so much prep and planning for those other meetings that I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. And that Sunday when things shut down, that's when it got really serious. And so we were 1 week later, I'm standing in front of the whole restaurant team, and you know, it was emotional. It was after the last service, and telling everybody I didn't know what was gonna happen. We're going to help them file for unemployment. There's tears. We went from a week earlier, you know, almost tears of happiness, like this is a great team, I'm so proud of you, to tears of like, I don't know what's going to happen. You guys don't have jobs. Like, how are we going to go forward? And so that whole week was one of real low. We wrote contingency plans for the distillery side. So I told you, like, our business was 65% of the distillery business was sold through restaurants. And so our restaurant was closed, and then 65% of the restaurant business was gone. And so we sat down and wrote contingency plans with the leaders of the distillery team. And we had A, B, C, and D. And each one got progressively like lower sales, fewer people. And it was just I mean, when you're sitting down writing that plan, it's hard. I mean, Steve and Claire, you probably had similar thoughts where, you know, it's not what, we're entrepreneurs. We're used to growing. Like, we talk about growth, and when you're talking about like, well, it could be this, or it could be worse than that, or it could be worse than that, it's hard to do. And it wasn't until the end of that week that a distillery in North Carolina sent us information and said, hey, we think you can make hand sanitizer. Here's all the ways to do it. There's a guy in Ohio asking for it. You guys handle it. We've got so many people in North Carolina that need it. And that's when we started looking. And that's when I finally kind of came to the party and said, hey, this could be interesting, and really got my mind thinking that, you know, looking for ways to help us instead of just being fussed about what we were looking at. So that was kind of my long answer, just to get us started on that track. I think, Casey, is that kind of where you want me to stop at this point, and let's hear from Steve and Claire?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, there's, you know, I intentionally, like, the question's a little open-ended intentionally, just because I think the three are going to have different, you know, different experiences and different ways that you did pivot and did deal with this pandemic. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just hear that comment at the beginning, shut up to get people to like you, and I'm like, all right, dude, stop talking.
I'm glad you got the hint. No, it's for me. No, there are 0 people dialed into this that are interested in hearing from me. So all of you are welcome to share as much of your story as you'd like.
Okay. Well, I'll, so, you know, similar to Greg, you know, we were I think everyone was kind of like figuring out like what this was going to be for our company and for our business, how it was going to impact it. We decided, you know, we have our team, we do a lot of we have a big open office, so we have a lot of communications going around and around. And we had some people pretty early on saying they were getting kind of nervous about this. This was probably the first week of March, they were starting to get nervous about it. And, I was kind of like, let's just see how this goes. They were kind of like, schools were delaying spring break or extending spring breaks by a week or two. And we were like, okay, this is kind of being over. I remember the NBA season then got canceled. And then we decided a little bit earlier on, we were a day before that the state told us to close stores. We decided to close stores. We also sent people home. We told people, take your, if you have an extra monitor, if you have anything at the office, take stuff home. So we were a little bit earlier on that because we just had some people on our team, and credit to our team, who just kind of like made, kind of educated us on the leadership side of things. So, we have open communications with them, and I think that was something that was really helpful. So, we've been working from home, and it's been, our team, I've been incredibly impressed with how well our team has come together in this. And, I don't think it's anything but for the fact that they just want to do good things. And some of the stuff that we've done to pivot our business in this time is, playing on more things that are in pop culture, or things that are in, and when I say pop culture, we've been playing in stuff where talking less about sports related things and more things that are going on in the world, and figuring out how we can give back to our community as well. So that's one way we've been pivoting our business. I can get into that a little later if we want to get specifics, but our team has been amazing. And, I don't think we would have been nearly as prepared if we didn't have that open communication amongst the group here. So really it's been, just listening to people, and also talking with other members in the business community here as well to see what they were doing. That's been incredibly helpful as well. So I'll kick it over to you, Claire, to talk about your team's preparations.
Yeah. So COVID was hard for us to ignore because we do about 30 to 40% of our manufacturing in Asia. So we knew like the devastation of our Asian team, or of our team in Asia, was absolutely wild. And so I watched that. And as soon as we started to hear that COVID was coming to the US, it was like, game over, we need to start planning. So we were much like, I guess, like, thankfully earlier in the planning phase of COVID, because we knew how absolutely devastating it was. And then there was tsunamis in Asia. Like, literally, it was just like we felt all of the hit in December and January and February because our factory went underwater, and then we had like 4 employees go under critical condition. And so it was, I think ours was like earlier on, but because we knew how devastating it was, and we've been manufacturing Class 2 medical devices, tampons, and FDA approved products, pads, for the past 5 years, we, instead of looking at the things that we didn't have, which was really any customers, because we sell to businesses in schools. So we stock Google North America and Twitter. And Twitter was like, we're going to go remote forever. And we're like, oh man, we just closed a contract with you. And then of course our restaurant business shut down, and our K through 12 business shut down. And so we saw it was coming, but the benefit was, instead of focusing on the things that we didn't have, frankly, customers, we hyper focused on the things that we did have, which was an innate knowledge of how bad this is, and the fact that we already know how to manufacture Class 2 medical devices and FDA approved products. So in February, we actually, I'm very grateful, we had just closed our Seed Plus round. And so we raised $1.2 million. And in March, our investors were anticipating me saying that we were just going to like sit and wait, because we were in a different position. Frankly, we had the cash, and that was comfortable. But I played softball in high school, and they always said it's better to go out swinging than go out looking. And so I took all of the money and retooled all of our pad production to make FDA approved 3-ply masks. And that was at the end of February. And I'll be honest, we had 2 weeks for it to work or I wouldn't hit payroll. With like all the money in our bank, because manufacturing is tough, and you had to buy the melt blown fiber, and you had to buy on the plus side, we were one of the first companies bringing product in, which meant that we were able to support the state of Michigan and the state of Iowa and all of Veterans Affairs with their critical need. And we were reliable because we've been manufacturing for the past 5 years. So for COVID for us happened at a different phase. And because of all of that, I'm very grateful we actually invested in a whole division of the company, which is now workflow. And so we started with masks. Now we have disinfectant wipes and liquid disinfectant and a variety of other products, and continuing to consistently support now our core customers, which are our AmpFlow customers as they're coming back online, and then all of our new state agencies and hospitals all across the United States. So that's been our interesting lopsided journey of COVID. None of it was easy. I haven't slept in 6 months, so but we're still around.
You make it sound like sleep is important. It'll be fine, right? So
Yeah, this is a horrible joke, absolutely horrible, but my dad told me, he was like, Claire, well, you'll sleep if you die from COVID, so you better keep working. Really bad joke. My dad, that was not a good dad joke, but he was basically like, we were shipping tampons and pads, which if people don't receive their tampons and pads, it's like people aren't dying. But if people didn't receive the masks, like we support Nationwide Children's Hospital, we support Equitas Health, we support a variety of hospital systems all across the United States, and Veterans Affairs, if they weren't receiving their masks, there were a lot like people going into battle without the proper equipment. And so although it was a morbid joke, it was really honest. So yeah, I haven't slept that much. I'm excited to do it sometime soon.
Leave it to dads to be good and encouraging, right? So yeah, I think all three of you kind of in some way, shape, or form mentioned, Greg, whether it was kind of changing over to sanitizer manufacturing. Claire, you just talked a good bit about retooling, and Steve, I think on your end it'd be more kind of a little more online, less retail. But I'd be curious to have all of you dive in a little deeper into Claire, when in retooling, what did that process look like? You've heard supply chain issues, so in terms of sourcing material that you need for PPE, Greg, same thing, materials for sanitizer. I mean, so to dive in a little bit specifically into the various aspects that you guys had to change your business and keeping the rotation going. Claire, I think we'll start with you and then go to Greg and Steve.
I think it's a relationship business. And this is a real test and a huge testament to both Steve and Greg. You both leaned on your relationships and your core competencies. So for us, like as I mentioned, instead of focusing on the things we didn't have, we focused on what we did have, which was really innate knowledge on medical devices and how you import them and all of the registrations. After March and into April and May, the industry started to get pretty flooded with, frankly, folks that didn't have any domain expertise. Like Greg knows alcohol is sanitizer, Steve knows clothing is cloth masks, but there were some folks that were just like willy-nilly, like I can do this too, and it's really hard. Like the supply chain is really hard, and that's where, frankly, it gets really concerning. Every single day, the CDC shares all of these fraudulent masks that are coming into the US, or the disinfectant wipes that don't have the correct amount of alcohol. There was the whole removal of sanitizer from shelves on CVS because they were using the wrong type of alcohol. And I think for us, I'm incredibly grateful for the relationships that we built and really focusing on really leaning into our core competencies and not overcommitting to the things that we didn't have domain expertise in. I mean, we had tons of customers saying, well, can you do UV lighting, da 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 da? And I'm like, y'all, I don't know anything about electronics, but I can connect you with somebody that does. And so I think that that was something that was really important, was just leaning into what you know and not overcommitting, because people's lives are literally at stake.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I think we saw the same thing, Claire, in the distilling industry. So right now, just to give everyone kind of an idea, there's about 3,000 craft distillers across the U.S. And if you rewind, when we started, there were less than 100. And so a lot of these are new manufacturers, and a lot of them are pretty small. And when COVID hit and it was declared a national health emergency, the FDA came out and said, hey, distilleries, you can take ethanol and we'll give you this recipe. And if you get online, because all distilleries are FDA plants as well, we have to be FDA inspected. And so they said, hey, there's this resource. We have all these distilleries that could make hand sanitizer. So here's a recipe. If you get online and register your recipe, we'll give you an approved label and you can make hand sanitizer. And that made it, my explanation right there made it seem really easy, but there was a bunch that went into that. And so we had, and kudos to my team here, because they dug in and they jumped in and they figured it all out, and we got approved labels, and we worked really hard on the supply chain side, which is not easy, at a time when everybody else is trying to put hand sanitizer in 16-ounce or 8-ounce bottles with spray caps or pump caps. You can't find any of that stuff. And so, let alone the right licensing, but we went through all these hoops and got this licensing and got this product, and we were testing it. We were sure it was right, but there were a whole bunch of small distilleries across the U.S. that didn't have those resources, that didn't take that same approach. That, I mean, you could just see, you know, they put a bottle out, it doesn't have the approved label on it. There's one approved label from the FDA, and if you don't have it, like, you're doing it wrong. But I say all that, like, there was a big learning curve on our end. We were drinking from the fire hose, and kudos to my team for jumping in and figuring it out, because we basically made the decision to, I mentioned that it was the end of that next week after we were at the low point that we said we should make hand sanitizer. And we decided we would make 200 gallons. This gives you perspective. We said, we'll make 200 gallons. We've got plenty of alcohol here. Like, we can do that. That's a lot of hand sanitizer. It'll help. We'll call some fire departments and see if they want it. And within an hour, it was gone. And we had all kinds of people calling us saying, we need hand sanitizer. We need more. And so for us, it was kind of this, it was a huge need for it. And I sat down with my team and said, do we want to really jump into this? And kind of like Claire was saying, where she went big with it, we decided to go really big with it. And we knew our stills couldn't make it that quick. So we made some phone calls to our supply chains, and we bought basically like a tanker truck full of alcohol so we can make a giant batch of hand sanitizer. And we worked with a company that makes USP grade. So it's very, I mean, it's the highest quality you can get. And you have to pay a little more for that. There's more that goes into it, but we were looking at what Columbus needed, and we said, all right, let's do this. You know, it was a big commitment financially from our end and production wise, but we ended up jumping in, and it proved the right move, because Columbus really needed it. You couldn't get it in the grocery stores, and we ended up having lines around the block for days. And I always, I told this on different podcasts and different things in the last few months, but you know, that first day when I came in and we were going to sell hand sanitizer to the public, and there was a line all the way around the block. The police were here. We were stopping up traffic. It was kind of a mess. And I'm just scratching my head going, when I started Watershed, I had this dream that someday we're going to make this product, and I thought it would be like bourbon or gin that's going to be amazing, and we're going to launch it, and people are going to line up around the block to get it, and it's going to be so great. And here I am, day one, hand sanitizer, nothing to do with booze that you can drink, and we got a line around the block. So and it was just a funny thought in my head, but at that time it was great. That's what we needed. That's what the community needed. And I saw the way our team reacted, and just the positivity where it went from we were defeated and down and out to all of a sudden we had this purpose and we were going out and doing something special for the community. So, I certainly wasn't complaining about the line around the block.
Okay, that's cool, Greg. Yeah, so for us, the biggest shift that we had to make was not in retooling machinery for the most part, not in, changing over the formulas that we were making of our alcohol or recipes. For us, it was really a mindset shift that we had to do where we were focusing on what was topical, what are people thinking about. I'd say Homage has been very fortunate in the fact that we don't sell suits, we don't sell, button-down shirts. We sell comfortable clothing at a fairly reasonable price. We call it an affordable luxury. A t-shirt's about $32. So, it's something you can buy, but you're not breaking the bank for. So we've been pretty fortunate and we have a big online presence. So we've been pretty fortunate, but now we had to make sure we're hitting the right notes with our customers. So Dr. Amy Acton, who famously used the phrase, "Not all heroes wear capes," we did a shirt that said, "Not all heroes wear capes." And not only did we sell that shirt, but we donated a significant portion of the proceeds to the Huckleberry House, which benefits the homeless community here in Columbus, which is near and dear to Dr. Amy Acton's heart. So, we try to do those things. So it's not just like, okay, let's take advantage of this moment. We've, just to give you guys a little insight, we've raised over $200,000 for local charities since March 1st. I just went back and looked. So, we've done a lot of stuff to play in the community. And I think that's what helps connect us with our customers at Homage. Another thing that we have done, I'll hold it up here, shameless plug, but we have made, as Claire mentioned, we made cloth masks. So these are made from the same tri-blend fabric that Homage uses for the t-shirts. So they are very comfortable on your face, for as comfortable as a mask can be. We've done a lot of different colors. We've started to print on them with a donation tied to these as well. Every time we sell these, we've made a donation as well. So, those are the types of things that we've done to pivot our business. And, it wasn't necessarily this, but as Claire mentioned earlier, like having strong relationships with your vendor, like we worked hand in hand with him over, FaceTime, basically. We couldn't fly out to California where he's located, but having good relationships with him, like he converted his factory and they're cranking these things out, and we can't even stock these fast enough. So, those are the types of things that we've had to do with our business. So shifting the mindset, making sure we're, doing, it's a famous, we've attributed it to Les Wexner. I'm not sure if it's him, but we've always said that, you want to do good while doing well. So that's why we've been giving back to the community while we've been selling. And, also just, having good relationships with the vendors so we can get these cloth masks out there. And a little preview, we're going to have them starting soon for kids as well, because kids are going to be going back to school. So they'll be adjustable. They'll have little adjustments, and you can, so wide variety for sizes for kids. So, we're just trying to do what we can to kind of help out. And, it's been, but as we've all kind of felt, our team has just been amazing in doing what they've been able to do, whether that's the people working in our distribution center who are here every day, now people in our stores who are helping customers, or all the people who are working from home who wish they were interacting with their teammates face to face. So it's just been a hell of a team effort by Team Homage. So we're excited about, what it's done for us as a team, although we'd all like to be together more.
Steve, I think you just earned a bonus for that, because that's a perfect segue to the next question. I guess before I ask the next question, I just want to reiterate what Nikki said. I think there's a question box open somewhere, so if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to drop them in, and hopefully we'll be able to get to them. But I'm curious to hear, to kind of double click on, this isn't just an economic or an operational crisis, right? It's a human crisis as well. I seeing how many tens of millions of people unemployed, and obviously, 145,000 deaths in the U.S. alone. I mean, this is a human crisis as well. So I'd love to get all of your thoughts on how do you balance that? I mean, especially when in a lot of cases, laying people off may help save the business, but it's going to hurt them as individuals. Sometimes there's a tension there, not always, but sometimes there's a tension there between kind of the economic and the business interests, and then the human interests. So I think Porter and Greg, you're batting lead off this time, and then we'll go Steve and Claire.
Yeah, no, I'll jump into that. Before I do, Steve, that's really cool. 200K for the community that's fantastic, especially when we're going through what we're going through. There's some cool companies in Columbus. And when I hear something like that, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So nice work over there. You know, that question, Casey, is something that we have talked about at length, and we probably are with our industry having a restaurant and having sales reps that call on restaurants. It's something that we have really struggled with, and I don't claim to have the right answer. We've picked a path, and it's one that we're fortunate to be able to do right now, but it might change. So to kind of explain what I'm saying, we are allowed to open as our restaurant, but then our people would be put in a situation where we have a small space and not a big patio. And so if people were coming into Watershed Kitchen and Bar and sitting down, they'd have to take their mask off to eat and drink. If they're sitting at the bar, they're within 3 feet of our bartenders. If they're sitting at tables and we're dropping food off at their table or taking their order, we're within a few feet of people without masks. So our employees and our customers would really be put on the front line of this thing, and we could potentially be exposed and probably would be exposed, as we've seen many restaurants show up that employees are testing positive from time to time. And so we sat down with our team, and it's just been a lot of open dialogue and understanding, do people want to come back to work? Do they feel safe enough to come back to work? Are there things we could do to help them feel safe? Or would they rather stay at home? Can they stay at home? And we balance that with the Watershed side of things. So we're such a small space. If we're trying to only seat half the customers that we normally do, financially, that doesn't make sense. And so how do you have a sustainable operation that keeps people safe? And, you know, on one hand, you don't want to send people home without jobs, but on the other hand, you don't want to put them in harm's way by having them come in and in theory, serve people and perform the services that we perform in here when someone's potentially sick. And ultimately, we looked at it and said, we aren't going to be able to offer the Watershed experience as we know it until there is a different reality, one that's more like what we knew before. And so for that reason, we were going to shut the kitchen and bar down until 2021, sometime in 2021. And, you know, that was a really tough decision. Our team, when we made that decision, I was amazed that we contacted and talked with every single individual that meant that they didn't have a job for the time being. And every single person thanked us for doing that and not bringing them back in. And I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it, because there's a lot of restaurants that are open, and those are our partners and those are our customers. And there's some that are doing it really, really well. They have bigger space than we do. They're able to space out, so it's a safer environment. And there's some employees, I'm sure that financially they need it, and they would rather be at work. And so we were in a unique situation for our team. But I think everybody has to have those conversations internally and determine what works for them. But that has not been a fun part of it. And, you know, it's just a tough balance. You don't want it over your head like you're pushing people to work and putting them in harm's way to make a buck, or you're sending them home and not opening and there's on unemployment. And I don't know. It's a lose-lose, I feel like. And so we've just had a lot of open dialogue. So I solved the problem. I shed zero light on the situation. Sorry, I'm sure these two have much better solution than we do.
No, I think you described the dilemma that a lot of people were in very well. For us, just as an example, so we have a few different workforces. We have our office workforce who we've really sent home, and our office is attached to our distribution center. Our distribution center is here every day. So we decided to make sure our office staff doesn't come in. So just less people, as few people as we can have in here as possible, the better. So unless you needed to be here, we have one of our customer service reps in here. I come in, I have to do a lot of the mail, and just stuff that I wasn't doing previously, but now I'm doing it because I'm able to come into the office. But other than that, the office is pretty empty. So we had a distribution center staff, we had an office staff, and then we have our store teams. And Greg, we had that same question in our head, is like, is this going to be the same experience in store? Should we open up these stores? Should we not? We ultimately decided to open up our stores. But we are doing things very differently than we have in the past. First off, we have a greeter at every store entrance. We've required masks since the day we've opened, and we have paper masks that are at the front door. And we've actually been incredibly surprised and pleased with how people have been receptive to that. I mean, I think that's a matter of luck versus, who came into our store over the past few months versus, so anyway, but we've
smart
had
customers.
Yeah. So but we had to figure out how we were going to handle things. So also in April, we were lucky and fortunate to be able to receive some PPP money. So we decided that when we received that money, we were going to do the things that it was intended to be used for. So for our store teams, we couldn't pay them their full salaries while they were gone or while they were off. But our managers and assistant managers, we picked up their health insurance benefits for the entire time that they were gone. We also provided hazard pay for when store team members came back for a while. We've also, our distribution center team, we provided hazard pay as well. So for a period of time, we were paying them above average or more than their normal rates. And we were picking up their health insurance just because we wanted to do as best as we could. We've also kept current with our landlords because that was one of the intentions for what the PPP money was there for. I'm very proud to say that we have not had any layoffs at Homage. We did furlough some store team members who have now been brought back since we've opened up stores, but we did not do layoffs. We did have some people whose positions really weren't required at the time, and we offered them different roles within the company. So we've adapted. We care deeply about our team, and we're trying to do what we can. I'm sure we could always do more, but we wanted to make sure when we got the PPP money, it was used for the right thing. But we've tried to keep an open dialogue with our teams. It's not as fun doing them over Zoom calls as it is, over a beer or over lunch, but, we're doing what we can. So, we're always trying to think about how we can do better by our team. But I think you guys all know it's just hard to please everybody all the time. And we're just trying to do it. And then as you think about this group and all the things you're doing, another group pops up and says, hey, what about us on this? And, so you're just always kind of trying to figure things out. And one last thing, we actually were without an HR person for a while. So we've had myself and a few other teammates really step up. And during this time has been incredibly difficult to not have an HR person. So we luckily hired one on about a week and a half ago. But I'm sure you guys all know that like having, someone who can really be there to keep your team's interest front of mind at all times is really important. So, we've just been doing all we can to keep everyone happy as best we can during this like crazy time.
Yes, I love hearing your words, Steve and Greg. And I just think how grateful I am that we didn't have direct retail. Obviously, we had retail customers, but so I'll take this question in a little bit of a different way. At AntFlow, one of our mission statements is people helping people, period. And what was interesting right at the beginning of the really large influx of demand, we were making about 200,000 masks a week. We've since scaled to about 2 million masks a week, and that hasn't slowed. But at the beginning, we had to make the choice of who we service first. And I think when we think about people, that's a really difficult question. It's the same kind of questions that self-driving cars have to think about. Who is the most important? We didn't have really a right answer. We said initially like hospital workers. And then we were getting all these requests from government so that government could be able to support their bus drivers and USPS servicemen. And like we so often forget all of these critical workforces. Like CODA, we're so thankful to be able to service them, but so many people forget the buses are still going. And I think that that was a challenging question when we think about the human element. Like, everybody is impacted by COVID. Somehow you still need to go to the grocery store. And for Aunt Flo, we have a really strong giving model. For every 10 tampons and pads that we manufacture and sell, we donate one to a menstruator in need. And so we're often working with the homeless population. And so when all of the mask mandates came up, the organizations that they support were saying, our people can't even go to the store because they can't afford a mask. And so it's so interesting to think about, back to our core mission of people helping people, period. Okay, great. That's awesome when you have all of the supply in the world, but I hated making the decisions of like who gets what at what times. That was horrible. And we didn't have the right answers. And we just wanted to work faster and faster and faster. But that was how I took that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And like I said, kind of in the intro to all this, I think the fact that is, I think how reflective all three of you are and how you struggled with that decision, I think is certainly indicative of character. So I appreciate all the stories and certainly insightful. One question I want to be sure to get to, and we're running a little bit low on time, and all of you have, again, businesses to operate in a once in a century pandemic, so we want to be respectful of your time and everyone else on the call. A lot of those in ACG are service providers in some way, whether business valuation people, for example, or accountants, or bankers, attorneys. There's some insurance consultants, those types of roles. A lot of others, but that makes up a good portion of us. So good, bad, or ugly, I'm curious to get some thoughts. I know, Steve, you mentioned PPP. I know bankers and attorneys can often be involved in the PPP process, as can accountants. So whether PPP or some other aspect of this pandemic, how have your professional services, what can we learn from the experience that you've had? Again, good, bad, or ugly, what can we do the next time you guys are in a crisis situation? And we'll start, I think it's Steve's turn. So we'll start Steve, then Claire, then Greg.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say probably the thing that I would avoid is sending another link to a webinar. I don't know how many webinars I got from every single person. It was just like people who we don't even work with were sending me a link to a webinar and how valuable it was. And that, I'm sure it was just overload. So it wasn't that it was bad intentions, but it almost became like spam at some point. I'm just like, I don't even know which one to dial into. So I did find that our attorneys at Kegler, they put on a twice a week call that it was just you could dial into, and they had an attorney, they had an accountant, they had an insurance person on there, and they were just talking about PPP, all the stuff that was going on, and it was quick hit. It was fairly quick hit. People could ask Q&A, but it was just like, it was bi-weekly, and as things were changing, it was incredibly helpful. I would say it was nice when people picked up the phone and called. I'm sure, Greg, like you mentioned with your employees, like I'm sure they really appreciated hearing a voice instead of, just an email. So I think, as people are going through a pandemic, if I were, I used to work at KPMG, but reaching out to clients and just saying how things are going, what you can help out with. Emails, personal emails were nice too, but reaching out and just saying like, hey, how are you guys doing? What can we do to help out? Are there any things you guys have questions on? Because the attorneys, the accountants, the insurance company, you guys all have expertise in house, and I would recommend kind of sharing it more on a personal basis versus like, hey, here's this webinar, just because the webinars are, made for the masses. So it wasn't always like you dial into one and it didn't apply to you, or, they didn't answer the question exactly how you wanted to. So I feel like a personal touch with, when we had those, they were a lot nicer than just forwarding a webinar link.
Great call, Steve. I love that. General service industry, y'all had me on this because I speak my mind. I'll be honest, nobody likes paying for you guys. You are the things that keep us running. but it's really a pain. And so, like, I don't like paying for HR, but I know it's necessary. So one thing that I've always appreciated about the vendors that we work with, if there's one point of contact, I've literally had to create org charts for a service group that I've worked with to understand who I'm supposed to contact for what. And I don't like paying for you guys. I definitely don't like thinking about who I'm supposed to contact about one thing. So I loved having an account manager. If that's a possibility, lean into that. And then second to that, I think especially during this time, there are definitely two starkly different types of companies. There are ones that are going through the worst of the worst and the ones that are booming, right? Like think about Zoom and et cetera, et cetera. And we stress tested our vendors to see if they were built for our kind of growth. We had to file Nexus in 10 new states, and we had to do that like on a dime because we started working with government. So you can't mess that up. And so it really stress tested what vendors had the agility to be able to traverse wild times with us. So I think for vendors, this is the perfect time to demonstrate your value. It's also the time where founders and CEOs are really putting you to the test, both for companies that are soaring and also companies that are struggling. And so I think that this is a really exciting time for vendors because you can earn new business because people are really considerate of who their vendors are. So those are my notes. Greg, over to you.
No, I think what both of you said is spot on. And, I'll echo what Steve was saying about the personal calls. So there's so many questions you have, and I was inundated, I'm sure both of you, based on what Steve said he was too, with these webinars and these information sessions, which on some level are great. We need that resource available, and I watched some of those, but quickly I understood that I didn't have to watch them all. And it was way more impactful to be able to make a specific call to my insurance agent and say, hey, what on this is covered? Talk me through it. What's going on here? To my attorney and say, hey, what's the best way to work with my employees through unemployment and furloughing, and what's the difference, and how do I get resources together for them? To talk with we use a temporary CFO service and an accountant, and talk with them about cash flow planning and specific to our business instead of just a webinar. The whole PPP information and everything that was flowing out of that. It was, I watched some stuff that was coming out on webinar form, but it was a lot of specific individual conversations about how we're going to navigate that. And calling our attorney and saying, hey, can we use it here? What do you think? And so I think those personal calls are really, really relevant, and that's what makes the difference. Because I can see like every law firm in town and accounting firms were putting out these webinars, but it's the personal conversations that I remember, and that's who I'm going to reach out to next time. And I could declare a little bit like anytime I'm calling somebody like that, I'm like, how much is this costing me? And we need those people. We totally do. But as a small business owner, you're like, I've done this before myself. Why am I calling? But you have to call. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to talk again, but I am really impressed with the people on this call. Claire, the fact that you guys are doing 2 million masks a week, that's incredible. And 6 months ago, you weren't in the mask business, were you? That's phenomenal. Kudos to you guys, and I know Homage is doing some masks too. So that, and then the money that you're donating back to the community, it's phenomenal. Really cool to hear your stories.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Well, again, being respectful of everyone's time, I think that's a nice positive note to end on here. I guess I'll open it up, and there's no order on this one, but any kind of last words that they'd like to share with us before I kick it over to the closer.
I'll go. Go ahead, Steve. Go, Steve.
Okay.
Go.
I was waiting for you to. Okay. Anyway, I was just gonna say, I think what's been incredible is just, and I know we've kind of all talked about it, is the community that we live in here in Columbus. Like, I called, people I know at Piata, at Brewdog, at, all these just Big Lots, people just throughout the community, and they've all been so willing to hop on a call, help out. How are they handling things? It's just incredible that people are so willing to help. And I've just been, Greg, Claire, we didn't come across you yet, but Greg, you guys help just, you said, come on over, just, come around back, ask for this person, and you guys hooked us up. So people have been so willing to help, and I think we're very fortunate to be in Columbus. I hope all communities are like this, but I can only speak for ours, and it's been great to be a part of it.
I love that, the collaboration. And I think that that's really something to lean into. Like, obviously, we're all making some form of PPE here, but I have Greg's sanitizer. Whenever somebody needs a cloth mask, frankly, Steve's are better than ours. We're really good at disposable masks, but our masks are, like, our cloth masks are built for a different type of person in a different industry. And so I think, like, there's no there's no competition, there's always collaboration. And then I'll just go back to, especially for our folks in the service industry, a hyper focus on the things that you do have and stop fretting about the things that you don't have. Because when you write down a list, like, literally write it down, you have a lot of time, pen and paper is wonderful. When you write it down and take that time, you'll see a lot of the things that you can lean into and maybe provide value to others.
Yeah, I'll just say, again, it's a great community to be in, and it's been, one of the worst years that I can remember, and 2020 has thrown stuff at us that I don't think anybody imagined, but being in Columbus and seeing how we've come together and helped each other, it's stuff like that keeps us positive and keeps us working together. And when Dave and I started this business in 2010, it was all about working with the community and being part of the community. And I feel like the crisis that we've gone through has really been an opportunity to kind of double down on that and see how the community has responded. So I'm proud to work and live in this community, and I think the second half of the year is going to be better than the first, and 2021 is going to be better than 2020. I'll put it out there. I'm going to knock on wood.
I think we are all looking forward to 2021. So real quick, I just wanted to thank all I could keep this conversation going. This has been unbelievable. So I keep this going for another 5 hours, but I don't think anyone would join an ACG webinar again. So I want to thank again all of you for your time. I appreciate the time, and also what you're doing both as a business and philanthropic, and just your support efforts for the community. I think the more businesses like the three of you run, the better off we'll all be. So with that, I will pass it over to ACG board member Mike Renzelman to land the plane for us. Mike, over to you.
Great, thank you, Casey. Wow, what three interesting businesses and stories. I mean, Claire, Greg, and Steve, thank you very much for sharing with us today your stories. They're very intriguing, and I hope everybody, I know I have learned a lot from today. I'm gonna start by, one of the things that I was gonna do, I'm a partner with Schneider Downs and also a board member with ACG, and as a partner with Schneider Downs, we are an accounting and business advisory services firm. But rather than talk about the services that we offer and put a quote, an advertisement out there, all I'll say is, at Schneider Downs, our job is to ensure we provide value for what you pay for and all the services that we provide. So with that said, I learned from today's call as well, so thank you for that information. That said, just a few minor points. Our next event is the virtual happy hour scheduled for Thursday, August 13th. More information and registration can be found on the ACG Columbus website. We want to say a special thank you to all of our annual sponsors and make our programs possible. If you have questions about membership or events, you can reach out to Nikki Glenn at acgcolumbus@acg.org. Again, thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.